shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
This week, I had a unique opportunity, an opportunity I haven't had in a long time, and that was to return to the seminary that I went to and listen to one of my professors do a lecture. This professor is a brilliant, brilliant woman, and being there and listening to her again was fabulous. But I have to tell you, there was also this reminder about being there in seminary again and listening to her again. And the reminder was, I really struggled with this professor when I was in school. The Myers-Briggs has 4 different branches, and on 3 of those 4 different branches, we are opposites, which means we're wired almost completely differently. And she is a brilliant, wise professor, but the reality is I could not write a paper for her to save my soul, or to save my grade, as it would be. I had her for a handful of classes, and the last class I had from her was my favorite. It was a reconciliation class. And I'd had her for long enough, I thought, I can do this. I can write for her. So I sat with the syllabus, and I was absolutely meticulous, going over everything she asked for in the paper. And I was so pleased, and when I got the paper back, she gave me a Mercy C, and she says, I have no idea who you wrote this paper for, because this is not what I asked for. And she went through and she didn't like the way I used quotes, and besides, Leah, your ending is weak. I did get the Mercy C. Today, as we hear St. Mark's account of Easter morning, the same could also be said for St. Mark. Hey, Mark, that ending is a little weak. Actually, there are 2 different endings in St. Mark, where we stop today, and then there's 12 extra chapters. Most theologians agree that those 12 extra chapters were added on because somewhere along the way, other theologians decided St. Mark had a weak ending. Mark, who are you going to convince of the good news by saying that they were terrified and they went away and they said nothing to no one? Who are you going to convince, Mark? And I have to tell you, I don't think Mark is trying to convince or talk anybody into anything. St. Mark is simply telling about the experience of those first disciples on that first Easter morning. And Mark is believing that the truth of what they saw and what they experienced is truth that people will see and will resonate with folks. You know, oftentimes as we walk through this world, we know all sorts of truth that we may or may not admit that we know. This last week, a friend from a very long time ago happened to be in Silverton. She happened to come into my study, and we were having this conversation about things that we just know. And she goes, you know, Leah, do you remember when I called you because I couldn't make up my mind about the sofa? But I smiled. I waited for her to go on. Thank goodness she did, because I had no remembrance of the conversation. And she had called me. And she was in the store, and she had finally decided between 2 sofas. And she was saying, now the first one is beige, and it's so practical, and it would work in the space. But the other one, it's beautiful. It's this rich burgundy, and it feels so nice and soft, and I just love it. And apparently in my wisdom, as I said, I have no recollection, I said to her, it sounds like you already know the answer. There are many things that we already know the answer or the truth about, but we still have struggle admitting or acknowledging those. In the New Testament, over and over again, people ask those sorts of questions about Jesus. He taught, and they said, he doesn't teach like the scribes. He doesn't teach like the other rabbis. He teaches with such authority. Whose authority does he teach with? He healed people and he forgave sins, and they asked, who can forgive sins except for God? Saint Mark is not trying to convince anybody of anything today. Saint Mark is saying to us, this is what God has accomplished. And by the way, Jesus is on the loose. The women went to the tomb this morning with a very practical agenda. In the haste of Sabbath coming, they had wrapped Jesus' body up and they put it in the tomb. And now, with Sabbath finished, the women were going to clean the body and anoint the body. And as they're going along, they say to each other again, so practically, but who is going to move that stone? We can't. We are not capable of moving that stone. This morning, as we gather around this Easter good news, as we approach the tomb, we can ask, who will roll away our stone? The stone of our sin and our shame, death and the devil, because we are not capable. Who will release us from the graves that we have dug for ourselves? Who will go ahead and show the way? Who have you come looking for this morning? Easter morning transforms that question. From the hopelessness of the women who approach and say, who will roll away the stone? To awe and amazement. Who rolled away that stone? And you know the answer. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Amen.
Well, this light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. And every day, every day, every day, every day, every day, I let my little light shine. Oh, Jesus gave me light, I'm gonna let it